Let's take a look at how Yablo can help logistic teams overcome their biggest challenges in customer communication. Email is a primary communication channel for most logistic teams. Looking at the number of emails that need to be processed on a day-to-day basis, it's not hard to see that this is no ordinary task. To successfully handle those incoming emails, it also often requires a collaboration between different internal teams, such as sales, operations, and finance, as well as external partners, such as different authorities, carriers, and brokers. Missed messages or any lag in communication has a direct impact on the revenue of your company. It adds friction to your supply chain, impacts customer satisfaction, reduces efficiency, and increases costs. Yablo is a communication command center for modern logistic teams. It aggregates all conversations, external ones we have with our customers and internal ones we have with the different teams involved. Yablo makes sure that everyone is always on the same page and has all the information to get their job done. Furthermore, Yablo is designed for Microsoft 365. We want to make sure that Yablo is not yet another tool, but that it perfectly integrates in your current workflow. Whether you would like to use Yablo inside Microsoft Teams or connect it to your Outlook, we've got you covered. We're going to experience a day in the life of a company that ships electronics for the maritime industry. Things that run according to plan are typically straightforward to manage. But when a problem arises, it is important to act swiftly and get the different teams and stakeholders involved. In our use case, a buyer from a retailer is sending a message about an incorrect invoice. A fee is charged for quick delivery, but the shipment was delayed for several hours, missing the agreed time slot. This message is being sent to the account manager through the sales inbox that is managed by Yablo. The account manager, in our case James, will get his team involved to verify that a mistake has indeed been made. Next, James will hand over this case to the operations team to verify what was the actual cause of the delay. As the shipment was carried out by a third-party carrier, this involves checking with them. In the demo, we're going to see how Yablo unifies all parties, both internal and external. All relevant communication is centralized, and the handoff between different teams and a timely follow-up with the buyer runs smoothly. Let's start with the first part of our use case, where James, the account manager, is being contacted by the buyer. Let me first make you familiar with the layout of Yablo before we jump into the actual demo. In the left navigation, I see the team inboxes I'm part of. Think of a team inbox as a collaborative space where I can work together with a team on all incoming messages. You see, for example, the sales inbox that is used by the account managers. On the right side, you see a list of conversations that are still open. All emails that are sent to the sales mailbox end up in this queue as open and unassigned conversations. The messages of the selected conversation live in the center pane right here. You will recognize traditional email features, but Yablo has a lot more to offer that will become clear during this demo. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm starting this demo as James, the account manager, working out of the sales team inbox. I see a message from Tony Anderson, who works as a buyer at a retailer called Oceanic. He claims that there is a problem with one of our invoices and expects this to be corrected. He also wants to know what the cause of the delay was. We see that this conversation got tagged as invoicing. Using tags to classify conversations helps us gain better insights in the types of customer requests we receive most often. As Oceanic is one of our most important customers, I'm changing the priority of this conversation to urgent so that everyone knows that this should get top priority. To verify if there was indeed a problem with the delivery, I'm going to get my colleague Rachel involved. Instead of forwarding this email and starting a new separate email thread, I simply mention Rachel in the comments pane on the right side and send her a message. Yablo makes sure that Rachel gets notified and that she gets access to the same email conversation. Both Rachel and I are working on one single copy of an email thread, and she has all the information to get started. Comments work in real time, and we see that Rachel is already working on it. Great. After Rachel did her check whether there was indeed a late delivery, she posts a note with her conclusions to the email conversation, including an export of the shipment data from our transport system. You can look at notes in Yablo as a kind of post-it notes that you can simply add to your email conversations so that everything stays in one place. And by the way, notes are always kept internal, so I never risk sharing private information with my customer by accident. Now that it's clear that there was indeed a late delivery, it's time to move on to the next phase of our use case, where James is handing over this case to the operations team. Okay, let's get started. I'm still signed in as James, the account manager. First of all, I'm going to add myself as a follower to this conversation. This makes sure that I can always follow along with this conversation even though I handed it over to another team. Time to move this conversation to the operations team inbox so that they can start working on this. Moving conversations in Yablo is so much more efficient than forwarding emails. When you move a conversation to another team inbox, the complete context is moved to the other team, including all emails, attachments, notes, priorities, comments, and tags. Lastly, I post a short comment in the comments pane on the right side to send an internal message to the operations team. Comments in Yablo are a great way to coordinate with other persons and teams inside your organization without having to forward emails internally. Now that James has handed over this case to the operations team, it's time to switch over to Sam. Sam is working as an operator at the operations team. We're now signed in as Sam and have the operations team inbox open. As you see, the shipping request has appeared at the top of the queue in the operations inbox. I see the complete history of the conversation, including the note posted by Rachel earlier. On the right side, I see all past comments and a complete audit trail of everything that happened with this conversation. We're working with a team here at Operations, so I'm going to assign this request to myself so that all my colleagues know that I'm handling this one. We don't want to do any duplicate work, do we? The subject of the conversation is not distinctive for this case, as my team and I are dealing with similar cases on a regular basis. So I decide to rename the conversation to a more descriptive subject. No worries, the customer does not see this updated subject when sending a reply. It simply helps our team to keep track of the different cases we're working on. Let's switch back to James for a moment and see how this looks for him. So we're briefly signed in as James, the account manager again. When James opens the conversation, he clearly sees that Sam is working on this request. This is great. If James has any additional information on this request, he knows who to contact at the operations team. Sam also posted a comment informing James that it might take some time as he needs to get in touch with the carrier that handled the shipment. Let's go back to Sam from operations, as I still have some work to do. It is my job to find out the cause of the late delivery and where the responsibility lies. As the shipment was handled by an independent carrier, I sent out a message to ask for more information. The great thing about Yablo is that I can simply start a new conversation, in this case with an external carrier, from within the same context. This way, everything related to this one case stays together and is not scattered around in multiple email threads. To make sure I don't lose track of this conversation, I can set a reminder in Yablo when sending my message. If I don't get a reply on my message by this evening, Yablo will remind me so that I can take the necessary actions. It's fantastic to have such a loyal assistant by my side. Let's forward a few hours. Sam's shift is over and is taking some well-deserved time off. In the meantime, the carrier responded with an update on the cause of the delay, so that's great. And James, our account manager, is an early bird, so let's have a look how it looks from his perspective. When James opens the conversation, he immediately sees the reply of the carrier. Even though he was never included in the actual conversation, he is still able to follow along with all replies. This shows the great strength of Yablo. Yablo brings all conversations and people together so that they are always on the same page and have access to all information. James can already start replying to his customer without having to wait on Sam. And when Sam gets back to the office, he can still clear out all the necessary details with the carrier. Being able to work in parallel and in full transparency helps you as an organization to streamline your processes. Let's recap what we just saw. With Yablo, you're able to take control of your different inboxes and handle customer requests much more efficiently. All stakeholders are working off one single thread, the original buyer's request. It is one single version of a conversation that multiple teams and stakeholders can collaborate on so that we're able to minimize friction in our business processes. Want to see for yourself how Yablo can help your logistics company? Get a demo at our website today.